Thank you very much for the invitation to join you, and I apologize for not being there physically. In essence, we are all interconnected. When the Ukraine war happened, my country in particular suffered the consequences of the war economically quite seriously, especially in terms of agricultural products. With the Gaza situation occurring, that has affected international trade through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, and of course, the situation and security in the Middle East, in the Mediterranean as well, consequently in Europe. I think the problem with the Ukraine issue and the Palestine issue is that they are very much similar and very much dissimilar. And I'll very briefly explain that. But let me also add that we cannot afford not to resolve either of them. Let me add also that I don't see a total victory for anyone. And I think the issue really is, what is the level of loss involved for the different parties in both of those conflicts? I don't think Russia can, under any circumstance, conclude that geopolitically it has come out a winner in this process. And Ukraine, no doubt, will feel that it has lost territory if we reach a solution to it. So there is a double loss here. And I would argue also, in spite of all of the violence in the Middle East, in spite of the military might used by Israel, not only in Gaza, but throughout different theaters in the Middle East, the reality is the Palestinians, if a solution is achieved, will never get the amount of land they were originally allocated as part of the UN resolutions. In fact, they will get much less than the 22% we negotiated for over the last decade or so. And I would argue also that there is no military security solution for Israel's concerns. Every time Israel has used excessive force, I take you back a decade, 2 decades, even in Lebanon, the result has been the emergence of more opposition, more extreme opposition. Hezbollah, for example, only emerged with the Beirut bombing in the 80s. So the idea that you're going to achieve security by bombing your way through different countries is not going to work either. Occupation has to end. The problem has to end in Ukraine. The problem in Ukraine was the West and East, the former West and East, had a political paradigm that frankly was not sustainable, a balance of power and spheres of influence. When that shifted, the cards played in different directions. In the Middle East, we have been trying to achieve a two-state solution for 5 decades at least. We have not succeeded. Initially, that whole idea started to dissipate, and one lost hope in it. Then suddenly, with the Gaza situation, it's now become sort of the only option people find feasible. The international community and the parties themselves have to remain consistent to international law, and they have to remain consistent in their policies. If they do not, we ultimately will end up with these bifurcations. Let me just quickly make one point, and then I will close with a couple of quick comments. I went to Russia post-Ukraine, and I said in Moscow that historically I understand the logic that you argue about what the West has done. But for a middle-sized state like my own, any occupation of territory by force is a violation of international law. It cannot be justified, irrespective of bargains being kept or not being kept. But it's not an either-or situation. We both need to work on this. On the Middle East, I have, in all my careers, I have never seen a level of violence that we've seen now. But the violence has occurred repeatedly from both sides when the cycle shifted in favor of one or in favor of the other, or the level of anger reached a peak. And again, just very quickly, let's not forget, level of anger is not the other side only. Those who killed Rabin were Israelis. Those who killed Sadat were Egyptians. So the level of anger is a function of what people live in the region. And I raise this point because Egypt has been at peace with Israel for well over 4 decades. None of my adult children have ever seen an Egyptian-Israeli war. But what the people in the region see today by way of hundreds of thousands of injured, over 45,000 people killed in Gaza, 3,000 and some killed in Lebanon, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure the Israelis are shocked with what happened in October 7th as well. The idea that you get your revenge or retribution by force is only a short-term response to a much more serious malady. And let me close with the following points. Together, Europe, Middle East, international community, we have to be consistent in our policies. We have to hold parties accountable for what they do and what they don't do. There has to be consequences for violations of international standards, because as we break them, they will have implications on all of our security in different themes. Where we are in the Middle East, we have 3 options. Continue to kill each other, that's one option. Other option is to decide that Israelis and Palestinians will live together under one identity in one territory with one nationality, and that's with equal rights. And that's frankly far beyond idealism, and frankly, you really have to be unrealistic to think that's going to happen in the near future. The third option is to have a separation between Palestinians and Israelis, with each of them having their national identity. And that's very, very difficult in the present circumstances because of settlements on the one hand and the political makeup in Israel on the other. But we cannot allow that problem to endlessly keep the flow of people being killed going on and on without any sort of response. We need a ceasefire. It was really regrettable that we had a Security Council resolution vetoed yesterday, simply calling for a ceasefire. We need also to find a ceasefire in Lebanon, not only in Gaza. What I envisage is we need to package the immediate steps in terms of ceasefires in Gaza with hostage exchanges, or a ceasefire in Lebanon with arrangements inside Lebanon. We need to package those with the ultimate solution of the conflict between Arabs and Israelis. Doesn't mean we have to do them all at the same time, but they have to be integrated with each other so that one leads to the other. Nobody in Gaza is going to accept, no Palestinian, is going to accept a solution that ultimately gives Israel occupation, de facto or de jure, of the Qatar. And frankly, the idea that Israel wants the right to intervene in Lebanon at whenever it feels necessary is a clear violation of international law. But we have to find a way also to address legitimate Israeli concerns within international law, not interpretations of international law that give Israel hegemony over the region. So my closing comment is, let's link the ceasefire issues with, on the Palestinian side, the goal of a two-state solution. And that can be adopted as part of a Security Council resolution, specifically a follow-up on the resolution adopted by the Council within an American initiative. I think it was 2735, where it talked about hostages and ceasefire, but also that it was part leading to a two-state solution. I don't see the Israelis immediately embracing that process, but I do believe that if they want to have a ceasefire and a hostage release, they're going to have to move towards that commitment, and the international community has to confirm it so that there's no moving back from it from where we are today.